Regent Street, downtown Salt Lake City. Inspired by the printing presses of Regent Street that busily churned for years publishing the Salt Lake Tribune and the Deseret News, the Regent Street press sheet winds its way down the street. Along its meandering path, you'll find stories about the long and diverse history of this part of Salt Lake City. Once called Commercial Street, Regent Street has been the site of Salt Lake City's red light district, a home to the Chinese immigrants in the late 19th century, a center for headline news in the 20th century, and now is at the heart of the city's cultural core. John Held Jr. was an American cartoonist, printmaker, and one of the best-known magazine illustrators of the 1920s. He said, "In those days, the hot spots of Salt Lake were located in a tidy manner on a street that ran between 1st and 2nd South and Main and State. Within the streets were saloons, cafés, parlor houses, and cribs that were rented nightly to the itinerant ladies of the calling. It was against the rules to solicit, so these soiled doves would sit at the top of the stairs and coo their invitation to 'come on up, kid.'" Henry Jew was the son of Joy Jew, one of the first merchants on Plum Alley. The family store, Wu Sang, sold merchandise such as chinaware and silk from China. He said, "On New Year's Day they had big New Year's celebration in Plum Alley. Some of them old guys would come over and give us the red envelopes with the lucky money in them. That was quite a haul. When you'd get up there, you might get $20 in silver dollars." Plum Alley ran north and south, dividing the city block between Main and State Streets, the cross streets being 100 South and 200 South. During the early 20th century, within and around Plum Alley, the Chinese developed a micro-community with grocery and merchandise stores, laundries, and restaurants. Evelyn Auerbach was born in Timbuktu, California in 1859. She said, "The Salt Lake Theater was opened to the public in 1862. It was built by Brigham Young at a cost of $200,000 and equal to any opera house in the East. It had an orchestra, stalls, first, second, and third circle, 3 boxes on either side reserved for Brigham and his family. At that time, no money was in circulation, and you paid for your ticket with produce, butter, eggs, vegetables, etc." Brigham Young said, "We will have to go to work and get the gold out of the mountains to lay down, if we ever walk in streets paved with gold." For more than half a century, Plum Alley and Regent Street were the home of Salt Lake City's Chinatown. Almost 1,000 people lived and worked on Plum Alley at its zenith in the 1890s. Many Chinese people immigrated to the western United States in the second half of the 19th century to build the first transcontinental railway, completed in 1869. By the late 1880s, Plum Alley was home to an established Chinese-American community. During that era in Salt Lake City, nearly all people of Chinese origin were barred from renting or owning property outside of Plum Alley. The Salt Lake Tribune in the year 1900 describes the area. "From a corner there comes the cry of hot tamales. In a nearby mission there's the sound of a hymn. This is mingled with a coarse song nearby. The evangelists on the street are listened to when they can be heard above the traffic and the music from the houses. Chinese merchants sit on their doorsteps and indulge in gossip and smoke after their day's trade is over. Occasionally a female figure flits in from one of the side streets and is swallowed up in the darkness of Plum Alley, and it needs not more than one guess from the uninitiated to tell where she has gone to. All this before 12 o'clock. Maud May Babcock was the first female member of the University of Utah's faculty. She said, "The theater is the only art medium which has a universal popular appeal. It can and must be within the reach of the masses, that the divine spark within shall not die in us." Alfred Lambourne, a landscape painter and the early scene painter at the Salt Lake Theater, said, "The city of the saints and its streets and houses were almost hidden by the trees of many orchards, which made an oasis brighter green amid the sage-gray sadness of the open valley. And in the midst of the green, above the trees, one could see as he came out of the canyon mouth and across the eastern benchland a white oblong building. It was this playhouse. The Salt Lake Pony Express station was located at 143 South Main Street. The Pony Express riders swore an oath. I do hereby swear before the great and living God that during my engagement and while I am an employee of Russell, Majors, and Waddell, I will under no circumstances use profane language, I will drink no intoxicating liquors, that I will not quarrel or fight with any other employee of the firm, and that in every respect I will conduct myself honestly, faithful to my duties, and so direct my acts as to win the confidence of my employers, so help me God. Wallace Stanger was an American novelist, environmentalist, and historian. He said, "One cannot be pessimistic about the West. This is the native home of hope. When it fully learns that cooperation, not rugged individualism, is the quality that most characterizes and preserves it, then it has a chance to create a society to match its scenery." And this plaque talks about the history of Salt Lake City's red light district. It says that the growth of Salt Lake City in the 19th century mirrored that of other western cities in many respects, including prostitution. The red light district emerged on Regent Street in the 1880s and continued to exist there through the early 20th century, with some brothels persisting on Regent until the 1930s. Regent Street's location within the commercial district on Block 70's interior made it a setting where prostitution was tolerated, as it was not easily visible from the major streets surrounding it. Brothels were unofficially regulated through intermittent arrests and fines for people engaged in the trade in this area until 1908, when the red light district was moved to the west side of Salt Lake City.